Act as if. Those 3 words have the power to reshape your entire reality, because the moment you wake up and step into the identity of the person you want to become, everything around you starts to shift. You stop waiting. You stop hoping. You start embodying. And when you embody your dream life, even before it shows up, life has no choice but to rise to your level. Right now, you might be standing in a room that doesn't reflect the life you imagine, but your state can. Your energy can. Your decisions can. When you move, speak, and think like the version of you who already achieved everything you desire, you ignite a force inside you that refuses to settle for less. You activate a mindset that says, I will not live by circumstances, I will live by intention. Today, I want you to step into that version of yourself, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, now, because the life you dream of isn't waiting somewhere far away. It's waiting on you to show up as the person who deserves it. Your future self is calling, and the only question is, are you ready to answer? Your mind responds to who you decide to be, not who you currently are. Because identity shapes every thought, emotion, and choice you make. Most people live their lives based on their present circumstances, their past mistakes, or the limitations others placed on them. They wake up each day reacting to their environment instead of creating it. But the truth is, your environment doesn't determine your future, your identity does. The moment you choose who you want to become, your brain begins reorganizing itself to match that decision. It doesn't wait for proof or success or permission. It responds to direction. When you declare, this is who I am now, you activate a completely different level of focus, certainty, and internal power. Think about it. The person you want to become, the one living your dream life, doesn't think the way you think right now, doesn't move the way you move, and doesn't hesitate the way you hesitate. They make decisions from confidence, not fear. They act from purpose, not doubt. They see challenges as stepping stones, not roadblocks. When you decide to embody that identity now, your actions begin to align with it. Suddenly, the things that once felt impossible become natural because you're no longer acting from the limits of your old self. You're acting from the strength of your future self. Your identity becomes a filter. If you see yourself as disciplined, you behave differently than someone who believes they're lazy. If you see yourself as a leader, you start speaking and thinking with clarity instead of uncertainty. Identity upgrades behavior instantly because your brain hates acting out of alignment with what you believe you are. It will always push you to act in accordance with the identity you choose, whether that identity is empowering or destructive. That's why people stuck in self-doubt keep acting in ways that sabotage them, and why people who believe in their vision take bold actions even when the path is unclear. Identity drives consistency. Consistency drives results. And results shape your entire destiny. The power lies in choice. You don't wait for evidence to decide who you are. You choose first, and the evidence follows. When you decide to be confident, your brain starts looking for moments to express confidence. When you decide to be focused, your mind begins filtering distractions differently. When you decide you are worthy of your dream life, you stop tolerating things that shrink you. Every decision reinforces the identity you're stepping into. And over time, those choices build an unstoppable force inside you. The biggest mistake people make is believing they need success to feel successful, or achievement to feel worthy, or validation to feel confident. But it works the other way around. You feel it first, you embody it first, and then you create it. Your mind mirrors the identity you choose. If you choose limitation, your life shrinks. If you choose expansion, your life expands. The moment you decide who you truly are, you stop living as a product of your past and start living as the architect of your future. Identity creates destiny because who you believe you are determines how far you allow yourself to go. Every action you take, every decision you make, every risk you embrace or avoid is rooted in the identity you carry within yourself. Most people never realize that they're not limited by their abilities, resources, or circumstances. They're limited by the story they keep telling themselves about who they are. When you see yourself as someone who struggles, you behave in ways that reinforce struggle. When you see yourself as someone who wins, you take actions that lead to victory. The identity you choose becomes the blueprint your entire life follows. Your identity shapes your internal standards. A person who identifies as healthy won't tolerate a lifestyle that drains their energy. Someone who identifies as resilient will refuse to stay down when life knocks them over. A person who identifies as successful behaves differently from someone who identifies as a failure even if they both face the same challenges. The difference lies not in their circumstances, but in the way they interpret those circumstances. One sees setbacks as a temporary obstacle, and the other sees them as confirmation of their limitations. The moment you shift your identity, you shift the meaning you attach to everything that happens to you, and that meaning controls your actions. Identity also shapes your emotional home, the feelings you return to most often. If your identity is rooted in doubt, you'll return to doubt whenever pressure hits. If it's rooted in courage, you'll respond to challenges with strength instead of fear. And because emotions influence your choices, your emotional home becomes a major contributor to your future. People who identify as victims tend to attract situations that reinforce helplessness. People who identify as creators attract opportunities because they move through the world with confidence and intention. Your destiny isn't shaped by chance. It's shaped by the emotional patterns your identity allows. Identity also determines your habits. You can try to force yourself into new behaviors, but if those behaviors don't align with who you believe you are, you'll eventually go back to old patterns. But when your identity shifts, your habits follow naturally. A person who decides, I am someone who keeps promises to myself, will follow through even when it's uncomfortable. A person who chooses the identity of a high achiever will take action even when motivation fades. Your identity becomes the silent engine pushing every behavior you repeat. The powerful truth is that identity is a choice. It's not something you inherit, and it's not something you're stuck with. You can decide to shift it at any moment. You can choose to become the version of you who is disciplined, driven, creative, unstoppable. And the moment you commit to that identity, your destiny begins to realign with that decision. Life starts opening doors that match the person you are becoming. You begin to attract people, opportunities, ideas, and possibilities that resonate with your new identity. The world mirrors back to you who you've decided to be, which is why choosing a powerful identity is one of the most life-changing decisions you will ever make. Emotions are the fuel that drive every choice you make, and your physiology and focus have the power to shape those emotions instantly. Most people believe emotions are random, like waves that come and go without control, but the truth is that your emotional state is something you influence every moment through the way you move your body and what you choose to pay attention to. If your shoulders drop, your breathing becomes shallow and your head lowers. Your brain interprets that posture as stress or defeat. But when you stand tall, breathe deeply, and move with strength, your brain registers that shift and immediately produces a different emotional response. Your body is constantly sending signals to your mind, and those signals shape how you feel far more than most people realize. Your focus is just as powerful. Whatever you focus on, you feel. If you focus on what's missing, what's wrong, or what might go wrong, you will automatically generate fear, tension, and hesitation. But if you focus on your potential, your progress, and the possibility in front of you, you activate motivation, clarity, and drive. Focus works like a magnifying glass. It doesn't just show you reality, it amplifies it. Two people can live the same day, face the same obstacles, and carry the same responsibilities, yet one feels empowered and the other feels overwhelmed. The difference isn't the situation, it's the focus. Focus shapes interpretation, and interpretation shapes emotion. When you combine powerful physiology with intentional focus, you unlock emotional control. You no longer wait for motivation, you create it. You no longer hope for confidence, you generate it. Your emotions stop being reactions and start becoming tools. You can shift into courage by shifting your breathing. You can step into certainty by changing the questions you ask yourself. You can move from doubt to determination by changing your posture and directing your focus onto solutions instead of problems. This ability to shift emotions on command is one of the core skills of anyone who performs at a high level in life. Emotions also determine your level of action. When you're filled with hesitation, you move slowly or not at all. When you're filled with energy and certainty, you take action quickly and decisively. That's why shaping your emotional state is essential, because your state affects your behavior and your behavior affects your outcomes. If you wait for the perfect mood, you'll waste years. But if you take charge of your physiology and focus, you create the emotional fuel needed to move forward now. The most successful people don't rely on feeling good to do what needs to be done. They create the state that empowers them to act. Your emotions create momentum. They can either pull you toward your dream life or push you deeper into excuses and doubt. When your physiology is strong and your focus is clear, momentum works in your favor. You start making decisions with confidence instead of fear, taking risks with intention instead of hesitation, and responding to challenges with power instead of frustration. Your external world begins to shift because your internal world is no longer ruled by randomness. It's directed by choice. Small, decisive actions taken with certainty create massive momentum because progress is built on movement, not perfection. Most people wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect level of confidence before they begin, but waiting is the fastest way to stay stuck. When you take even the smallest step forward with intention, you activate a psychological and emotional shift inside yourself. Your mind recognizes movement as proof that you're capable, and that proof builds belief. Belief creates more action, and action builds momentum. Every major transformation in life begins with a single decision followed by a single step, repeated consistently until the impossible becomes normal. Momentum doesn't come from big leaps, it comes from consistent motion. When you take decisive action, your brain releases energy, focus, and clarity that weren't available before. You begin to see possibilities you couldn't see while standing still. You begin to trust yourself in ways you couldn't while overthinking. Action cuts through doubt, silence, and hesitation. It creates certainty through experience. You don't gain confidence first and then act. You act first, and that action produces confidence. When you move, the universe moves with you. Opportunities that remained invisible suddenly reveal themselves because you're finally in motion. Even the smallest action has impact because your brain associates movement with progress. If you decide to improve your life and immediately take a step, no matter how small, you signal to your mind that you are someone who follows through. This builds identity, and identity shapes destiny. Every time you make a promise to yourself and keep it, your internal standard rises. Every time you take action instead of making excuses, your inner strength multiplies. And every time you move forward despite uncertainty, you weaken the grip of fear. Progress becomes addictive, and you start craving the next step instead of avoiding it. Decisive action also trains your mind to break through resistance. Resistance is strongest right before you begin. The moment you start, the weight lifts. That's why the first step feels heavy, but the next steps feel lighter. When you take action with certainty, meaning you commit, you follow through, and you don't negotiate. With yourself, you build a pattern of decisiveness that can change your entire life. Most people exhaust themselves thinking about what they need to do, but those who succeed channel that energy into doing something, even if it's imperfect. The world rewards action, not intention. Momentum creates a compounding effect. One step turns into two, two turns into five. Five turns into a completely different level of belief and identity. You start making choices from a higher place, not because your life has changed yet, but because you are changing. And once you begin changing, the world has to respond. Doors open, people show up, and solutions appear, not because of luck, but because movement generates clarity, power, and possibility. When you commit to taking small, decisive actions every day, you build unstoppable momentum that carries you toward the life you want faster than you ever imagined. When you act as if your dream is real, you train your brain to make it real, because your mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a physically lived one. The thoughts you repeat, the emotions you generate, and the behaviors you embody communicate a powerful message to your subconscious. This is who I am. When that message becomes consistent, your brain begins building patterns, habits, and expectations that align with the identity you're stepping into. Acting as if is not about pretending or fantasizing, it is about conditioning your mind and body to operate at the level of the life you want long before the external evidence appears. Everything you desire must be created internally before it ever becomes visible externally. When you act as if your dream is already unfolding, you shift your internal chemistry. Your emotions begin to match the future you want instead of the circumstances you're currently in. You feel more confident because you're behaving as someone who has already succeeded. You feel more focused because you're no longer waiting for conditions to change. You're living in alignment with your vision. Your energy elevates, your decisions sharpen, and your presence becomes stronger because you are connecting to the reality you are creating rather than the reality you are escaping. This emotional alignment is one of the strongest forces for transformation. When your inner world shifts, Your outer world has no choice but to move with it. Acting as if also changes your behavior in practical, tangible ways. When you see yourself as someone who's already achieved your goals, you naturally take actions that reflect that identity. You treat your time differently, your environment differently, and your opportunities differently. You stop engaging in habits that pull you backward. You make decisions with more clarity and conviction because you're not choosing from fear. You're choosing from certainty. You begin to operate like someone who expects success, not like someone who hopes for it. This shift in behavior compounds over time and becomes the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Your brain's reticular activating system, the filter that determines what you notice, also becomes tuned to your vision. When you act as if, your mind starts seeking out resources, connection, ideas, and solutions that align with the future you're embodying. Things you once overlooked suddenly stand out because you are finally aligned with them. Your awareness expands, and opportunities that were always around you become visible. This is why people who commit to a vision often experience breakthroughs that seem like coincidence, but in reality, they are the result of alignment, focus, and internal readiness. Acting as if also weakens the grip of doubt and fear. When you behave like the version of you who has already won, fear loses credibility. It becomes harder to believe your limitations. When your actions reflect your strengths, you begin proving to yourself, moment by moment, that you are capable of more than your past suggests. Over time, this builds a level of certainty that becomes unshakable. You stop waiting for life to validate you. You validate yourself through action, emotion, and identity. When you consistently act as if your dream life is already unfolding, you shift from hoping to creating, from wishing to becoming. You transform your mind into a magnet for the reality you desire by embodying the person who naturally attracts it.